These same Sumerian texts also refer to the Earth as the seventh planet, as if being counted from the outside of our solar system in toward the sun. Since Neptune and Pluto were only discovered in this century, how could the Sumerians of 10,000 years ago have known that the Earth is indeed the seventh planet? According to Dr. Sitchin, no one but space travelers coming to Earth past Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars could have considered Earth the seventh planet. Our quest for the truth about the Great Pyramid at Giza has now taken us into outer space, and to the theory that beings from another world may have actually built this colossal monument for their own purposes. And now we begin to make our own voyages to other planets, exploring the vast reaches of our own solar system. But have our meager explorations to date helped us to find the answer to the pyramid mystery, or simply raised more questions?
The fundamental mathematical relationships communicated by the structures at Cydonia are now eerily replicated in the Giza complex here on Earth, including the very placement of the Sphinx. Even the key latitude of Giza, north of the equator, is now directly linked to the D&M pyramid latitude at Cydonia on Mars. So we can't tell who the builders were. There is a clue, however, and it's in this mile-long, 1,500-foot-high humanoid face. Our thinking now, our team's thinking, is that that face is our face, or what we once were. So in a sense, someday, not now, but someday, we may discover that we, in fact, were the Martians.
Are the so-called pyramids of Mars merely bizarre natural formations? Or are they the ruins of carefully constructed monuments that have been abandoned for many thousands of years? It does stand to reason that voyagers traveling across our entire solar system might place such markers or beacons on more than one world. Even so, the notion of extraterrestrial visitors constructing the pyramids of Egypt may seem to many to be simply too outrageous. Is it not possible, after all, that the ancient Egyptians were simply far more advanced than we'd previously believed? Don't the theories of alien pyramid builders ignore the ancient Egyptians and any contribution they might have made in the creation of the Great Pyramid? Certainly. But then, the Egyptians themselves seem to have ignored it also.
The Great Pyramid was the greatest single undertaking in the whole history of mankind. And yet there is not one picture or drawing, not one artifact, not one inventory or tally sheet to tell of its construction. The Egyptians left us some 3,000 years of written and pictorial history, covering virtually everything that happened in their culture, from babies being born to plowing and harvesting, building, weaving, sacrificing, praying, embalming, but nothing about the pyramids of Giza. Why?
When you enter the Great Pyramid, it's devoid of these hieroglyphs. And the answer is simple and explained by the fact that the Great Pyramid was not built by Egyptians. The Great Pyramid was built by a group of people which are known as Hyksos, or shepherd kings, rulers of foreign countries that came into Egypt and constructed the Great Pyramid with better methodology.
In light of all the new findings, experts seem to be reaching the same conclusion. Could it be that the proof of extraterrestrial visitation to Earth has for centuries been right there before our very eyes? Do Egyptian records fail to mention the construction of the pyramids because they were already there when the Nile Valley culture began to flourish? Is this the final proof that the pyramids are the keepers of a mystery that we may never solve? Until that time, the pyramids continue to stand silent and mysterious, refusing to allow their secrets to become a completed chapter. In recent years, many people have come to dismiss the so-called mystery of the Bermuda Triangle in the same way they would a superstition or a fairy tale. But given the growing body of evidence that many things are happening there that are beyond our understanding, there seems to be a pressing need to examine the legends and the facts about the Bermuda Triangle. To many, the Bermuda Triangle is nothing more than the nickname given to an area of the mid-Atlantic, roughly cornered by Florida, Puerto Rico, and the island of Bermuda. But is it anything more? Is it in some way different from any other part of our planet's oceans? According to many who study the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, since 1945 alone, there have been over 1,000 vanishings of everything from huge naval vessels to private boats, from small planes to commercial airliners. But of course, not only the craft disappear forever, but all the people on board them as well.
I think the most spectacular mystery about the Devil's Triangle is probably one of the ones that's more played down than any other, and that's the disappearance of the Navy ship USS Cyclops. This was a 500-foot, 19,000-ton coaling ship, and this took place during World War I. Back then, they had coal ships instead of tankers because most of the ships operated on coal. Well, this ship had over 300 officers and men on it, put to sea from Barbados in the British West Indies, bound for Norfolk, Virginia. It was never seen again. The ship and the 300 officers and men disappeared without a trace.
Some claim that violent weather in the region is responsible, that sudden squalls have downed aircraft and sailing ships alike, sending them in moments to the bottom of the sea. Others, however, suggest a far more sinister force is at work.
Over the years, I have checked and rechecked almost every theory as to why so many ships, aircraft, have vanished in the Bermuda Triangle without a trace.
From the old Spanish Admiralty records that Columbus wrote, we learned that he was the first to record the strange and frightening images in the night sky over what we now call the Sargasso Sea. We can only guess at the nameless dread that must have filled the hearts of the intrepid seamen lost in a strange and frightening world. But from his log and reports, we know that the Columbus expedition encountered the same mysterious phenomenon in the Bermuda Triangle that continues to haunt us, even in the pre-dawn of the 21st century. Columbus also recorded that the island natives, like the Caribs and the Iroquois of Puerto Rico, were long familiar with strange occurrences in this part of the world. Their legends contain many stories of sky gods and green fireboats that could fly in the sky or under the water. One of the most famous lost aircraft cases is that of Flight 19, 5 aircraft that vanished together shortly after World War II. It is also the story that many believe gives us the first clue linking the Bermuda Triangle to UFOs.
It began routinely enough on December 5th, 1945. An advanced training flight was scheduled for takeoff at 1400 hours. 5 pilots and 10 crew members were scheduled to go up. Ironically, their course was to be a simple triangle with an expected flight time of 2 hours. The flight leader was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, an experienced combat pilot with over 2,500 hours of flying time. Flight 19 had completed the first leg of the flight plan and turned north. Suddenly, all of the aircraft began experiencing problems with their instruments.
This is Foxtrot 28, calling Foxtrot 36. My instruments have gone crazy. My instruments are malfunctioning too. Where are we?
Some 40 miles away, Lieutenant Robert Cox, a training instructor, picked up their transmissions, but for some reason they couldn't hear him. Cox called the base station in Fort Lauderdale, which had lost contact with Flight 19, and immediately emergency procedures went into effect. Base operations continued to receive Lieutenant Cox's transmissions, which told them Flight 19 was lost and disoriented, but they could not get through to Taylor or any of his pilots. Ham radio operators up and down the coast were also tuned into the lost flight and monitored their frequency. Then, as night fell, one of them caught the last words to ever be heard from Flight 19.
Don't come after us! They look like...
What could Lieutenant Taylor have seen that caused him to insist that no one try to rescue Flight 19? Meanwhile, according to Berlitz, a huge search and rescue mission had already been launched. But then the first plane to respond to the emergency, a giant Martin Mariner with a crew of 13, disappeared from radar.
In the end, Flight 19 and the Martin Mariner, 28 men in all, disappeared without a trace, as if they had passed through some window into another dimension.
According to Berlitz, the Naval Board of Inquiry attributed the disappearances to malfunctioning navigational equipment that caused the planes to run out of fuel far out at sea. But is it really possible for this to happen to all 6 planes simultaneously? Berlitz goes on to say that one member of the Board of Inquiry was quoted as saying Flight 19 had vanished as completely as if it had flown to Mars. Could that remark, in fact, be very close to the truth? Few people would deny that many strange and unexplainable events have transpired in the Bermuda Triangle. But is there evidence to support the stories of UFO activity? UFO activity different from that observed in any other part of the world?
Sightings of UFOs are quite common in the Bermuda Triangle, as well as reports of persons kidnapped by alien beings. There have also been numerous accounts about disc-shaped UFOs under the water in the same way as they perform in the air.
Richard Weiner, author of The Devil's Triangle, relates a case that seems to corroborate these reports of underwater UFO sightings. He tells of a charter boat operator named John Carpenter and of his remarkable experience in the Bermuda Triangle. Carpenter apparently saw two UFOs exploring the water with some sort of projecting energy beam.
I provide you this footage from 2017 of a person who spotted an unidentified flying object above their vehicle in a field at night. It's interesting to point out the eerie similarities from the documentary you're viewing, in that the fragmented beam is green, that initiates the scanning over the vehicle, as if it were looking to find something or someone. This is one of the only pieces of evidence in existence to include the actual sound of the craft. Please turn your speakers up and listen carefully.
Carpenter then saw exactly what so many others had reported seeing. Carpenter's experience would seem to confirm that whatever is going on in the Bermuda Triangle goes through the water or through the air with equal ease. It isn't just beams of light or beams of energy that punctuate the puzzle of the Bermuda Triangle. There is also some sort of fog or mist, and it seems to have a variety of peculiar effects on ships and planes. Einstein said the Bermuda Triangle could be a cosmic doorway leading to a different time and space continuum. Do UFOs have the key to that door?
We're dealing with something which is interdimensional. We're probably dealing with something which has been around for a very long time, not just since 1947. The UFO phenomenon is something highly complex and is composed of many, many different aspects.
Well, you have to ask the question, are they from another planet? We don't know the answer to that. A lot of people believe they're extraterrestrial. A lot of other people believe that they are from other dimensions, parallel universes, time travelers, that they're us at 2 million years in the future. maybe separated from our reality by some thin psychic membrane.
UFOs have often been seen in the area by many witnesses, and a beam of intense energy has figured prominently. But other witnesses tell of a greenish glow or mist. Charles Berlitz has recorded for us the case of Chuck Wakely, who was piloting for Sunline Aviation in Miami. Wakely had completed a charter run to NASA and was headed back to Miami. According to him, the sky was perfectly clear. Suddenly, he was surrounded by an intense greenish light, so powerful, in fact, that he could no longer see outside of the plane. Wakely said his instruments then began to malfunction badly. Soon, there was little he could do but release the controls and let the plane fly itself. Then, according to Wakely, the glow just as suddenly faded and everything returned to normal. So if disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle are part of the UFO abduction phenomenon, have there ever been missing time episodes there? Take, for example, the case of National Airlines Flight 401.
The Miami Tower was called for a time check. The instrument panel clock was right on. They were 20 minutes out and right on schedule. Later, the co-pilot would remember seeing a strange green mist that enveloped the aircraft, but otherwise everything was completely normal.
Never seen anything.
But in the Miami Tower, the air traffic controller was jolted when the blip of the approaching Flight 727 suddenly vanished from the radar screen.
I've just lost Flight 727.
The controller immediately went into emergency priority status. Within minutes, the Coast Guard Search and Rescue Squadron was in action, and the Miami airport prepared for the worst.
Watch is broken.
When the flight attendant checked for any last-minute instructions, she couldn't believe she had completed her usual 10 to 12-minute cabin duties in less than 3 minutes. And the co-pilot was surprised to discover the greenish mist that enveloped the aircraft since the time check was gone, not only from about the aircraft, but from the sky itself. Precisely 10 minutes from the time Flight 727 had vanished from the radar screen, it just as suddenly and mysteriously reappeared. The complex equipment was in perfect working order, as the ongoing computer and manual scans verified. Flight 727 landed without incident, with the crew understandably curious about the emergency equipment along the runway. And they were all incredulous when told that their arrival was 10 minutes late, despite the fact that the instrument panel clock synchronized exactly with the earlier tower time check. It was now, along with every one of the crew's watches, 10 minutes slow.
And what of that green fog? Could it somehow identify the doorway into another time? Captain Don Henry tells us of his terrifying encounter.
We were coming back from Puerto Rico on the good news, with a tow of 2,500 ton on 1,000 feet of 4-inch hawser. Beautiful weather. You wouldn't want for a nicer day anywhere. I was enjoying some downtime in my cabin when the electric started acting up. We checked the whole system. Generators, breakers, shunts, just fine. Nothing wrong below. But topside, there weren't anything right. There was a funny-looking fog, I guess you'd call it, kind of oozing all over the barge. I figured I'd better take another good look inside, and that's just about when that blow smacked into us. "25 years at sea, I never saw the likes of that squall. It come out of nowhere. All our instruments were going crazy. Compass, radio, radar, engine monitors, absolutely berserk. At first, we was just worried about losing the tow, but then we started getting worried about our own skins. We were redlined at 850, big twin 2,000 horse EMV diesels churning up green water, and we couldn't make a foot of headway. Something had a hold of us and wouldn't let go. Then just like that, the squall was over. We set the automatic pilot to go check damage, and we hadn't lost no rigging or deck gear. But then what I saw gave me goosebumps all over. A half-ton of hawsers stiff-stretched after the fantail, and not a thing connected to the bitter end. When we got her hauled in, you could see there wasn't no eye splice, and the line wasn't raggedy like it had parted. No, sir. Looked like it had been whacked off with a fire axe, and there was a bone-aching chill in the air. Yet the rails and fittings were hot enough to give you a smart burn. We had a narrow escape from whatever took hold of us out there.
A half-ton of tow rope stretched out to nothing, and the barge was simply gone. Could aliens actually be controlling events in this part of the world? In seeking an explanation for the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, evidence presents itself that seems to indicate that real culprits are invaders from another world. But is this the only possible explanation?
The blue holes in the ocean apparently have the quality of swallowing things that fall into them more quickly than other parts of the sea. It is a curious fact that no debris has been found from the ships or planes which have disappeared in the triangle. It has even been suggested that for some reason it has been important to take ships and planes intact to somewhere else.
About once a year, some salvage crew will claim they found one of the missing TBM Avenger torpedo bombers. The most recent one took place right off Fort Lauderdale a few years back. They said they found 3 or 4 planes together on the bottom, and that sounded really like they'd found the missing Flight 19. But doing a little research, I found out that after the war, they had a lot of planes or TBMs at the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station that they had cannibalized parts off of for other planes, and they couldn't fly those planes out, so to get rid of them, and they were surplus and of no use to the Navy anymore, they loaded them on barges at Port Everglades, took them out to sea, and shoved them overboard. And my theory is that's what the 3 or 4 planes they found off Fort Lauderdale were.
Are entire ships and planes being captured by vessels from another planet? And if so, why would this happen in only one part of the world?
The strange goings-on in the Devil's Triangle are not exclusive to the Devil's Triangle. There's also an area off of the east coast of Japan called the Devil's Sea. If you went in the center of the Devil's Triangle and you bored a hole through the center of the Earth, you would come out in the center of the Devil's Sea. And the Devil's Sea and the Devil's Triangle are the only 2 places on Earth where the compass points to the true north, not the magnetic north.
Could this really be the solution to the centuries-old mystery of the Bermuda Triangle? And if so, does it indicate the final fate of those who've disappeared there?
It's a little bit unsettling that we don't know this yet. We should know it by now, but this is such a clandestine phenomenon that we have been unable to come to a firm agreement about what the concluding aspects of this abduction phenomenon is. However, we are on the verge of that. We're right now in information overload. Right now we know tremendous amounts about this subject, and we are closing in on the ultimate purposes. And I think within the next few years, we are going to completely solve this phenomenon, and we are going to know what the entire UFO phenomenon is all about.
Thousands of people are missing without any explanation. That is, no earthly one.
Perhaps we will someday know if alien visitors are indeed the culprits behind the disappearances and the missing time episodes in this most remarkable corner of our world's oceans. But until then, the terrifying phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle remains another unexplained mystery in the pages of UFO diaries. The planet Mars is next to our own, the 4th world counting out from the sun. Barren, perpetually cold, and with a thin atmosphere of poisonous gas. Surely no intelligent life could survive there. The surface of Mars, we now know, is covered with meteor craters, gigantic mountains, and deserts that reach around the entire planet. And one thing more. A giant sculpture that many scientists now speculate was created by some unknown race of intelligent beings. And if it is what it appears to be, what does that have to do with Earth? Mars is our nearest and most reachable galactic neighbor, but for some as yet unexplained reason, trying to study this planet has met with failure after failure. Beginning with 2 attempts by the Soviets in 1960, both missions mysteriously failed.
After the problems the Russians had getting their probes to Mars, American scientists started to joke among themselves about some great galactic ghoul that was preventing our missions from getting there too. In November 1964, the Americans launched the Mariner missions to Mars. But as it approached Mars, Mariner 3's camera shroud failed to open, making the camera useless.
It does indeed seem that missions to Mars have met with an unusually high failure rate. But in July of 1965, the American probe Mariner 4 finally brought success and completed the first flyby of Mars. So had Earth scientists at last outwitted the galactic ghoul? Apparently not. When the Soviets then attempted to actually land a probe on Mars, something astonishing happened.
Everything on the Mars probe seemed to be working perfectly, and then it just shut off.
Could it be that there's something out there that's interfering with Earth's efforts to conquer space? Or is it all just an incredible string of coincidences? Whatever the reason, it was 5 years before the United States made another attempt to reach Mars. But in 1976, the Viking probe began sending volumes of images back to Earth from their orbits above Mars, including these.
Encouraged by the success of the Viking probe, the Soviet Union, with international cooperation, launched a set of satellites in 1988. Phobos 1 never even made it to the planet. At some point, it just disappeared.
Phobos 2, the probe that was sent up to look at one of the moons of Mars, apparently encountered something very strange, of which the Soviets had a picture that did surface in the United States.
Of a very massive elliptical shape object.
The NASA individuals here that may know about it, of course, would never make a comment on it.
And then it too disappeared.
Has this bizarre string of space disasters occurred because we caught a glimpse of something we were not supposed to see? Has the Viking space probe presented us with a mystery that is unsolvable? The mystery first began to unfold in 1976, when the unmanned Viking space probe was going about its highly successful mapping mission of our neighbor planet. When the images that were transmitted back to Earth began to be analyzed, this surface feature in a region designated as Cydonia caught the attention of people all over the Earth.
The initial official reaction from NASA about this photograph is that it was just a trick of chance sunlighting. Certainly no one believed that there was a huge carved face on the surface of Mars. Besides, who could have made such a thing? No one believes in the science fiction version of men on Mars. And we know that Mars is not capable of supporting intelligent life as we know it. So the idea of this being a creation of intelligence was not even considered by NASA. Despite all of this, when the image was first recorded, it was labeled head. Then we went through the archives to see if there was any other satellite passes over that same area. NASA said there wasn't at first, and we looked through their archives and found one. And there, just as before, there was a face with a higher sun angle, showing more detail than before. And images of the eyes showed pupils, and of the mouth area showed teeth. We were very impressed.
These two separate frames, identified by their NASA frame numbers 35A72 and 70A13, also contain considerable detail about the surrounding area, revealing several other images that DiPietro and Molinar found as exciting as the mysterious face.
About 10 miles away from the face is a couple of pyramids. And the strange thing about those pyramids is they're very regular triangular shape. And in the corner of each corner, there appears to be a buttress. And on close examination, the buttress itself is pyramid shaped.
Was this undeniable proof that an intelligent race had once lived on the planet Mars?
This would be really, really remarkable for this to be a natural formation.
Many intriguing questions are raised by the apparent connections between this image from the planet Mars and ancient structures here on Earth. Perhaps the most intriguing being, does this image on the surface of another planet give us important clues to the origins of ancient structures on our world? Richard Hoagland's study team may have uncovered proof that one of our oldest relics was not built by human hands.
And as I began looking at some references and books and talking with colleagues, this was a sketch done by Shannon, one of our early artists in the team, we both realized that this image was somehow trying to tell us something profound.